I will talk about a game that I was just putzing around with one morning, though. I spent like 4 hours ish with, and it's a game that I got off one of the Steam sales, as the games that I normally putz around with are, and it was called State of Decay. Have you heard of this?
No.
Okay, do you like zombie games? Because I
No.
don't. Yeah, I don't either. Um,
Except The Last of Us, which is my game of the year for 2013.
right, but you don't like zombie games.
No.
So State of Decay, and I don't like zombie games either. And
Wait, except for I made a game with zombies in it.
that's a pretty good game.
It's a really good game.
It's a pretty good game.
It's a good game.
So I promise, listener, I don't just randomly buy games on Steam that are cheap. I do, in fact, read descriptions to ensure that maybe it sounds interesting to me. So I looked at State of Decay, and the thing that got me was it's a procedurally generated open world zombie game where your set of survivors that you have and that you go out and find are different, like kind of each time you play. And so the way the game works is like you start off and you're a character, and I don't know if you're the same character every time, but there's like a really loose story. Like my characters are out on like a camping trip and they came back, and when they came back, the zombie infection had run rampant and started, and so they get back like into town and they find a group of survivors that are all holed up, and that's where you kind of like set up your base. And so you're set there and you have various resources that like some of which are ticking down. So food, for instance, is ticking down, and I don't know, something else is too. And then you've got a bunch of other resources that you have kind of control over, like the number of cars that your settlement has. That's like a one thing, and like the amount of gasoline for those cars is another thing. Obviously, you're not going to be able to use any of the cars if you run out of gas. But the cool thing is that you have this home base, and the home base is mobile. So if you go out and you find like a larger building with more, or I should say like less points of entry that you would rather have your home base set up in, you can like, with enough money, and their money is influence in this game, with enough influence, you can kind of convince everybody to move the entire home base like to that area. Well, each one of these home bases has a set number of like modules that you can use to build stuff. So the first thing I built was like a garden, so we could grow our own food, and so food wouldn't be as big of an issue. But there's a multitude of other stuff that you can build, and then the very first one that you get to, there's like three different. There's only 3 open spots, and you can build stuff, and then you can actually upgrade the buildings, the stuff that you make. So you can like have a garden, and then you could have a better garden, right? That you upgrade later with materials you find. And the way you get materials is you go out on these self-motivated, I guess, resource runs. So there's a bunch of places that have been abandoned because of the zombie attack, and it's like you can hire somebody with influence to come out and go with you. But you can like stealth move through stuff if you want. You can drive a car up to stuff and just go in guns blazing type thing. But you can go into these buildings and you can find these resources to bring back to build stuff in your home base. And kind of the whole point is just to stay alive. There are some procedurally generated quests that keep you interested in like that way if you want, like if you need a little more direction, if you need somebody to tell you, hey, my sister was lost up in this area of town, like next to the grain silo, can you go like check and see if she's there? That gives you like an excuse to go out there and maybe explore that area. But that's kind of like the gist of the game. Sounds a little interesting, right?
No.
Okay. The thing that interested me was the creating your own home base stuff, and the open world nature of it. The problem with the game for me is that it's not fun to play at all.
That's literally what I just said.
For me.
It doesn't sound good.
Yeah, it's not fun to play. It's got a lot of really interesting ideas, but it's just not fun. And
What's
I don't
the
know
name of the game?
State of Decay. And I don't know if maybe I'm just completely over zombies that I just can't do it anymore. I kind of want to play Dead Rising 2, which I have, but have not played yet, because it's more of a farcical take on the zombie genre. But I think for the most part, I'm just kind of over zombies. But, the only way that zombies can be threatening are, I guess there's a couple of ways, but they're all the same in every game. They can either be super surprising and like pop out of something when you get close to it and bite you, or they can overwhelm you with their sheer numbers. But if you're ever in a situation where it's you and one zombie and you've got a 2x4 in basically any zombie game that you play, you beat the zombie to death over the head with the 2x4. Well, that's the majority of this game, is like you beating zombies with a 2x4. And that's not fun.
No.
And there's guns, but they're like bullets are scarce, so you don't want to use them, which is good. I like that. That's kind of the way it should be in a zombie game. But for the most part, it's just like, they're not fun to use. Like you don't fire well. It's just not fun. Like the game's not fun. And it's one of those things where I do see some potential there. Like the open world stuff, the building your own base, like the survival stuff of the game is interesting. But it's clouded by this not fun cloud that surrounds this game to play. So I can't recommend it. I don't think it's very good. It's not worth the $3 that I paid for it.
Yeah, the thing to me is there's nothing cathartic about beating zombies because they're not a real thing anymore. Like, you know what would be really interesting?
Yeah, I'm listening.
So if they had a game where you had to beat up, you had to like ransack like politicians' offices. Like you would go into like a crooked politician's office, just like break every piece of furniture, like powerbomb him through a table, just like break his legs and stuff like that. And then for every time you do that, you influence a positive policy like environmental protection laws and smoking bans being passed, and then you could shape the world that way. It would be like a legal simulator, but you'd get that cathartic feeling of just beating up corrupt bad guys.
That sounds like the worst game ever.
Are you kidding?
Sounds pretty dumb.
I will design it, and it will be better than State of Decay. How's that?
It could be called any game where you are a member of the rebellion and you are working to overthrow the evil empire. Any one of those games could be the game you just described.
No, I want a closer parallel
to wrestling
to wrestling,
right?
And to the current
state of the WWE. No, I see where you're going with this.
You see where I'm going with the current. I know you're trying to not get political. I see what you're doing here, but the current.
I'm trying to not get wrestling.
The current discontent with American politics. I'm just saying.
You certainly said it.